necessary that they will get a fixed rate of dividend every year. Right? So there may be a possibility the company is doing good, but for the last 2 years, company has not declared any dividend to the equity shareholders. So that means equity shareholder will not get anything. So there may be a possibility the company is having a huge profits, and even equity shareholders, they want that dividend should be declared to us. Right? Dividend should be given to us, but unless the management, the board of directors of the company, unless they do not want, unless they do not recommend, the dividend cannot be paid to the equity shareholders. But if we compare this, the preference shareholders, yes, preference shareholders, they get fixed right of fixed dividend, fixed rate of dividend every year. So that's why, see, name indicates preference. So they have a preference over fixed rate of dividend, and they have a preference over repayment of capital at the time of winding up, that is before anything paid to the equity shareholder. Right? But for us, preference shareholders or equity shareholders, both are shareholders, both are member. But the thing is, there are the variation in their rights. So there are the variation in their rights, but both are the shareholders, both are the members of the company. But equity, the main shareholder with lot of rights. Preference shareholders, they have some preference over equity shareholder, but with less rights. So preference shareholders, they do not enjoy, we'll discuss in rights, preference shareholders, they do not enjoy all the rights as compared to the equity shareholders. Now, equity shareholders, voting rights. Whenever the management of the company has to decide something, whenever the management of the company has to take certain decision, or whenever we need to take the approval of shareholders, members of the company, the management has to call the meeting of shareholders. As you must be aware, the shareholders, they cannot interfere or cannot participate in day-to-day management of the company. So whenever they have to take certain decision, they call the meeting of shareholders. They call the meeting of equity shareholders, and whatever the approval is to be taken, that is taken by the majority, by voting. So equity shareholders, they have a right to vote on every resolution. They can vote on every matter. Let's say if company wants to change its name, if company wants to change its registered office from one state to another state, if company has to take certain decision, if company has to borrow funds beyond its power as mentioned in a particular section of the Companies Act. So whenever the company has to take the approval of shareholders, company has to call their meeting, and equity shareholder, being equity shareholder, it's your company, you are the ordinary shareholder, you are the owner of the company, so you will have to cast your vote. So that is a voting right which is being given to the equity shareholders. And you can vote on every matter, on every resolution. Every resolution, whether it's a voting by show of hands, whether it's a voting by poll, by electronic means, or by postal ballot, whatever. Unless if a equity shareholder has not paid calls, because company sometimes can issue partly paid up shares. If a shareholder has not paid calls, then company can stop him, company can debar him to vote. Otherwise, if my calls have been paid in full, if I've paid all the calls in a company, then I cannot, the company cannot stop me to exercise my right to vote. So I can vote on every resolution. It says every member of a company that is limited by shares, so in holding an equity share, will have a right to vote on every resolution. On every resolution, because ultimately whenever company has to decide, company has to take approval of shareholders by majority. So we just need a simple majority, like more than 50%, or in case if it's a special majority, we need 75% of the majority. Then accordingly, company call the meeting of shareholders, and they can exercise their voting rights. So one of the most important right of equity shareholder is your voting rights. Sometimes there may be a possibility company can issue shares, equity shares of differential voting rights. If someone is having equity share with less rights, someone is having equity share with all the rights. So company may issue differential voting rights, but according to the rights which is given to you, the voting rights, you can always cast your vote, and make sure no company can stop any shareholder to cast it. So it's your major right to cast your vote, to control the company by way of participating in the meeting, by way of casting your vote to help the management to take decisions on certain important matters in the meeting. Participative, obviously they have a participative rights if the management or maybe the board of a company is not a competitive board. Maybe if directors are interested in a particular matter, and if they is not able to manage the affairs of a company, then equity shareholders have a right to approach the appropriate authority, or maybe they can exercise their right on their own by calling their own meeting and to participate in the management of the company. But that is only where you will have to prove it. The management of the company is not managing the affairs of a company in a proper manner, and that is against or prejudicial to the interest of the company. Appointment of directors. We know company actually belongs to the equity shareholder. They are the owner of a company. They appoint directors in the company. They appoint directors. So directors basically they control, they manage the company in day-to-day affairs of the company. But directors are always appointed by the shareholders. It's my company. Being a shareholder of a company, you are also a shareholder. So we all are the shareholders of a company. So being shareholders of the company, we have a right to decide who will manage the affairs of a company by appointing directors on the board of a company. So we always appoint directors on the board of the company. Legal action against directors. Yes, we also have a right. If any act done by the company as a directors, as I said earlier, any act done by the director which is prejudicial to the interest of the company, which is against law, which is against the constitution, yes, you have a right to go against the director. You can always approach the tribunal. You can always go against the management. If director is doing any fraud, if director's personal interest involved in a transaction, and if we are not happy with the transaction, if majority feels that the management is doing for their own benefit, so ultimately you are the owner, you are the right, you have a right to participate in that case in the affairs of a company. You can go against the management, you can go against the directors of the company if you find something that management is doing something wrong, or maybe the wrongdoers in control, or maybe their personal interest is involved. Right to inspect books of accounts like register and books. So we know shareholders, like we are the shareholders, but we cannot participate in the day-to-day management of the company. I don't know how like let's say if I'm a shareholder of X Limited, so I don't know how X Limited is managing the books, how X Limited is managing the records of the company, what are their accounts. So being shareholder, I have a right. I can always ask my management to show me certain books and certain registers, because I am the owner. I want to see what exactly is happening in the company. So this is a right which is given to me as per the law. Right to get the copy of financial statements. So whenever company prepare its financial statement at the time of end of financial year, like 31st March is going to end, and we know like after 31st March the audit will start. Company will prepare the audited accounts, will prepare the accounts, then accounts will get audited. So being shareholder, I have a right to get the copy of financial statement, the annual report of a company, to look into the financial performance of the company, what exactly the company has done during the whole financial year. So I have a right to get the copy of those financial statement. And if company is doing something wrong, or maybe if I need to take certain decision collectively as a shareholder along with all the shareholders, so being shareholder, I have a right to approach the management along with other shareholders up to a certain limit. I can always ask the management to call a meeting of us. That is known as extraordinary general meeting. We know the annual general meeting is being always called by the board of directors. But being shareholders, we also have a right to approach the management and ask the management to call a meeting of us. That is known as extraordinary general meeting, to take certain decision if we think management is not supportive. Similarly, whenever we need to alter the memorandum and article of association, like company is going to alter its article, company is going to adopt new set of article of association, in that case we need to give the approval. So without the approval, so this is the right of the shareholders, without their approval, management of the company cannot alter the memorandum and article of association of a company. So these are the certain rights. So now, by becoming shareholder, by holding shares in a company, does not mean that you are just a shareholder and you are buying and selling the shares in a company. That's fine. So being shareholder, you get lot of rights in the company. Transfer, that I'm sure everyone knows about it. We buy and sell the shares in the open market through stock exchange. What does it mean? We have a right to transfer the shares. So we can always transfer the shares. If I am holding shares, I want to transfer my share to any person, I can. If some other person wants to transfer the shares, the shares are the freely transferable in case of a company. So this is again right. So I have a right. This is my property, my shares, my property, my right. If I want to transfer it, I can transfer. Similarly, if company is going for the winding up, then company has to inform all the shareholders, and without the prior approval of company or approval of shareholders, company cannot go for the winding up. So company can't go for the winding up. Right to dispose of shares, the similar says ki if you want to pledge your shares, if you want to pledge your shares by taking money from a bank and pledging the share. Let's say I have a shares of a big company, right, and the market value is very good, so I can go to the bank and ask the bank to pledge my shares and give me the loan on the basis of those shares. So pledge of shares is allowed, because remember one thing, if you're having a shares in a company, that is your property, that property belongs to you. So I'm a shareholder, so I'm having shares, that is my asset, that is my property. I can always pledge, I can always dispose of, I can always sell those shares. So it's my right. So you can always do that. Preemptive right, again, this is very important, right? It says whenever company has to issue further shares in a company, right? So first, before asking the outsider, it's a preemptive right, the prior right of the existing shareholders. Right? So I'm a shareholder of a company. If my company needs to issue further shares, company can't do that. Company can't go to the outsider. First, company has to approach. Preemptive, that means the basic right, the prior right belongs to the existing equity shareholder. If company wants more money, first ask us. If we deny that, if we don't agree to invest further money in a company, then company can go to the outsiders. But preemptive right always belongs to the equity shareholder, right? Rights of preference shareholders, as you know, we have equity and preference both. As compared to equity, preference share has very less rights, because preference shares always get preference of fixed rate of dividend and repayment of capital at the time of winding up. Fixed rate of dividend, as I said, yes, preference shareholders, they get fixed rate of dividend, right? So they'll have to get the fixed rate of dividend every year, as compared to equity. Equity shareholder will get the dividend or not, depends. But if it's a preference shareholders, yes, they will get preference shareholders and voting rights, but only those voting rights which affects their rights. So remember one thing, preference shareholders cannot vote on every resolution. Right? Equity shareholders can vote on every resolution, but preference shareholders cannot vote on every resolution. They can vote only on those resolutions which affect their rights. So basically, they have very limited rights, because they get fixed dividend and they get the preference over the repayment of capital. But equity shareholder, without any preference, but they enjoy all the rights. So whenever you have to invest, choose wisely whether you want to invest in equity or whether you want in preference shareholders. Right? So this is all in today's sessions, the right of shareholders. So I hope you like it. So we'll come further for the further discussion on various topics for the education of the investors. Take care. Bye-bye.
We all use honey in our everyday life. Normally we buy honey from market, but we don't know the quality of the honey. So we can judge the quality of the honey, whether it is pure or it is adulterated with sugar solution. We can do a simple test at home and you can judge whether the honey is pure or adulterated. For this test, we have to take a glass of water. Now we'll add a spoon of honey. Here you can see the honey is going to the bottom and it is not getting dissolved in the water. So this is pure honey. Now we'll take another glass of water and I'll add another sample of honey. Here you can see honey is getting dissolved in the water. That means this is not pure. This is adulterated with sugar solution. So this is a very simple test to judge whether the honey is pure or adulterated.